the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. Today is October 10th, 2017. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast. We want to thank you for joining us. We want to thank our affiliate, KEPW.org, who streams our show now. We really appreciate that. And we want to thank you for helping me not learn how to not cuss, because it's an FCC program. So I now advise my guests we refrain from the big 7 words at least. So anyways, I appreciate all of you joining us. Today we have with us a returning guest, a friend of our show, Brian Porter, who is a forward-thinking person and has taken his own advice, so to speak, and radically changed his life. And I've asked Brian to come on the show and share with us some of his thoughts. He does run his own station, or I guess it's a radio station, or how do you call it, Brian? It's a website, right? MakingADifference.tv. Right. Yeah. So thanks for joining us, Brian.
Well, thanks again, Lonnie, for having me on, and thanks for being such a beautiful soul on this earth.
You're welcome.
The way we're going to change anything is if more people become Lonnie Clark. They're
sweet of you.
It's true. You have a busy life. We all have issues in our lives that kind of drain us and stuff. But you make it a goal every day to try to enlighten and bring some accurate perspective on what the hell's going on this planet. And
I don't know about accurate, but at least alternative, because sometimes I spew out my own harebrained ideas like Donald Trump was placed in the White House by the CIA. You know what I mean? That's raised some eyebrows. But I do at least say that they're my opinions. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that whole... Yeah, the thing is the perspective on things. I think we're looking at a very short timeline when we look at, like, your nation. I like to go back to the time of the Romans in the fact that, the church was, Mike's just walking by here where I'm living here, distracting me, where the church basically took over from the Romans, created all these knowledge systems, which are very unnatural, which took us away from the great Mother Earth. And then we created this science, much of which has been used not to help us, but to hinder us and to poison the planet. What we're seeing now is just the culmination of a lot of bad decisions.
Wait a minute. That's an interesting statement. I hadn't actually heard that science was created as a tool to manipulate. It wasn't like, oh, let's discover the universe, that they actually saw some of the malice that it could create.
Mike just went by saying nothing's black and white. Science is absolutely and completely useless if it's not guided by ethics.
Oh, that's 100% true. As we are seeing right now, with every aspect of science having lost its ethics, the planet is now dying and humans are having a hard time. They're going to have a hard time living on this planet. Who's Mike, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
Mike Nickerson is the guy who started where I'm living now, which is Lanark Eco Village. It's a beautiful 140-acre piece of land with some buildings on it, and I'm sitting inside a beautiful summer kitchen right now.
In fact, that's what I meant by you having done what you suggested. Give people where you were like a year ago and the transition to where you are now, and how that came about, and why you're doing it, because it's thoughtful living, and as everyone in your community is. Yeah,
we well, I started this, but like after my divorce in 2011, I decided to get back into activism, and then I started a show called I Am Nature a few years later after I started my webpage, World Renovation Project, to counter the trend in home renovation, which is really what destroyed my marriage. It seems that all that people want nowadays is to change, with the chairs on the Titanic. Nobody wants to look at the real issues we face, and we're spending billions upon billions of dollars on fixing our homes and changing our homes, and really we should be spending money on fixing this planet. That should be our first priority.
That's for sure. We should not, as my friend Charlotte says, we should have gardens, not grass.
Well, that's a good, I like that motto too. So then I started meeting all the world. I thought some of the top activists on the planet. I through a friend I met through in Ottawa, where and now I live closer to Ottawa. I lived there for quite a while. With my family.
Are you moving around because we're losing your signal?
And
Brian, are you? Excuse me, Brian.
When I returned to Toronto, which is a real.
You can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, we're losing your signal. Were you moving around, or were we just getting a dodgy signal?
Here is the internet is a little weaker than I'd like, but I can do videos from here, so I'm surprised that you're losing my signal.
Okay, so would you just repeat that last sentence, because it kind of came all broken up?
Oh, okay. Well, I think I was talking about the fact that we're spending so much time on our own personal little spaces, trying to pave paradise. And instead of really embracing what we are, which is we are a natural being, and we have to get back to our natural ways, our natural wisdom. And to me, this is the real solution to the mess. In the final, everything comes from Mother Earth, and her wisdom is it. We have to basically start again. There's a movie I recommend everybody on Earth see. It's called Astral City. Chico Xavier was the last closest thing to Christ on this planet. He died in 2002. He lived in Brazil. Of course, this is all blocked from us. This was part of my journey, too, because I went international to look for inspiration in great minds and great souls and spirits. I didn't just confine it to Canada and the United States. So I discovered this guy, Chico Xavier, and I have this movie posted online. By some miracle, it hasn't been taken down by the copyright trolls. It even says that they give me permission to show it because it has such a beautiful message. It's all about starting again. We basically become completely and totally lost as a species. So we have to start again. We have to get back to basics, get back to the garden of love and abundance.
Yeah, it's back to personal integrity and honoring yourself and honoring, because I guess this is where I'm like a classical liberal. I believe in ultimately the fundamental goodness of humanity, and that really we are improving as we look at the history of our species over the last 10 we're making strides, we're progressing. And I think this is why at least in our country, the political repulsion to what's happening in our politics is that we feel like we're being dragged back because we are making progress. We're not going backwards.
Well,
but there's a big blindness. This is the thing. This is the weird thing that I have. This show, The Age of Fission. In fact, The Age of Fission is what's really interesting. It's that Friendly Atom thing. That was the washing, where people just choose not to see big issues. Like they just can't look at the nuclear contamination. Like they can't look at, like, Erica Dugan, who is going to come on my show again sometime soon, her family has been seriously contaminated from fracking. Her doctors are hostile to her. She does not get any help from the elected politicians trying to dig up what's going on.
Right. Well, let's get back to the issue of politics, okay?
Okay, because this is politics, actually.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, let's look at it, I think, more closely. Again, I call myself a foundational thinker, so what I'm trying to do is relay the foundation, okay? The way we're supposed to be living. 500 years ago, we came here. Yeah,
but what do you mean? You mean the way our bodies naturally harmonize with what?
Well, in our psyche, our energy systems, everything. Small is beautiful.
Our vibration, like whatever that is, like our vibration of us as human beings and creatures on this planet, you mean?
Well, where do we fit in the larger complex of the biosphere and Mother Nature's plan for us, right? Where we fit in and where we can function most beautifully is in the smallest beautiful community. What big is bad, pretty much across the board, okay? Well, we let Father Son be the big, okay? He's the powerful one. He's the one who knows, what level of power is safe and at what distance and everything. And that's why the Sun is perfect, right? It provides us with safe nuclear or fission power, right? And it's a hell of a long way away, 8 million miles or something? Or maybe further, I'm not exactly sure how far away it is, but it's far enough away to keep us safe. But we brought that power here to our planet. And this is nonsense. I mean, this is insane, right? So we're breaking the laws of the universe. But when it comes to how we should be living together as a people, is we got to get back to the smallest beautiful community, because the power consciousness in us goes rampant in these complex, large systems. You cannot track the evil. It moves around. It's like a shell game. If it isn't one guy, it's someone else. And there's lines up of people who want to get this power, who want to find a way to use your labor and my labor to their benefit, while they sit back and reap in. So these huge hierarchies, these bank systems, these political systems.
That's the classical free rider. That's like the fundamental problem within every society, though. That's the fundamental political issue in almost every culture. What do you do with the people who just want to, do nothing and ride on your back or use your assets and act like they're doing nothing wrong?
Yeah, it's the slavery system. It comes in many forms and shapes. It's gotten really complicated now because we've got so many layers of classes and so many, and then the economic and the banking systems have gotten so complicated and almost nobody understands them anymore. So we've got to get back to simplicity, Lonnie. That's the key. And this is like people who are doing the eco-village movement. We've got a beautiful organization. I've been so busy lately doing personal stuff, moving and whatever, but I managed to sneak in an interview with the head of IC.org, which is Intentional Community Organization, Fellowship for Intentional Community. It's actually run out of the U.S., believe it or not. So you've got some amazingly resourceful and brilliant people living right within the confines of the U.S. Some of the smartest, most resilient, most people who know how to live sustainably in harmony with our mother.
My friend Charlotte, for example, she's growing a food forest. She's in fact starting her second food forest. You know what I mean? She knows how to farm without using water. You use microbes. Let me give you the big secret. You pour enough microbes, your roots grow deep enough, they get the groundwater. That's the fundamental thing. That's what she learned from the people in India. They put microbes.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I should put you in touch with her. We'll do that off the air, but I should put you two in touch because she's awesome. She also lives like you do out in the middle of the boonies, so she's a bit, she is literally living in the forest, growing her food forest.
Right. Well, that's beautiful. Well, that's what some call permaculture.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of permies around here. We call them permies. I know a bit about permaculture, but I don't. What we don't practice, but we have some beautiful gardens. I'm telling you, we pretty much produce all that we need right here. Of course, we're a little spoiled and we buy stuff that we don't really absolutely need, but we do. We do. If if this world somehow lost power or whatever, I mean, we have no problem surviving on this land. No, whatever.
Brian, how did you come to the transition to being a city dweller, living your life, being a divorcee, social activist, to like, oh, I've got to leave this house, get all my stuff, and go live? How did that your mind transition into that one? How long did that make you decide from the time you became an activist? You said in 11 to where you started to really think, okay, I can't live like this. To where you actually, how long did that transition take? Because
Well, let me say this. I wanted to do this sooner, but I felt an obligation to my mother, who was dying and extremely difficult to handle. So that was about 3 years, right? But even within the confines of Toronto, in a little town called Burlington, I created as much love and abundance as I could. I had birds all around me. I had a pear tree that would clean up after itself every fall, and people say that's amazing. I mean, I'd wake up one day and all the pears would be gone off the ground and off the tree. This is the kind of stuff that used to happen a lot more often when we lived in harmony with the mother. The nature spirits would bless us with healing. I still, Lonnie, I'm telling you right now, one of the simplest ways to reconnect with our Mother Earth is to sleep outside under the stars. This is something I do. I'm going to go for it the whole winter this year. I think I've got a system that's going to work for me this year, especially being out here. I may have to make a little igloo, but I strongly believe that when we stop sleeping on the earth, this is one of the things that separated us from the great wisdom of Mother Earth.
So what if you just sleep outside, like people that just sleep outside and not on the grass or on the, like let's say you're sleeping on like a cot or something in your patio. That's better than sleeping indoors.
You don't have to sleep right on the earth. Like people say you should walk around with bare feet. Well, we got ticks around here that'll give you Lyme disease. So I'm not too keen on doing that. But preservation first. But I do believe, and I sleep on a tent. Yeah, all I have between me is a light mat and the bottom of my tent. But what it is that we've lost connection to the incredible power of the nature spirits and the animals too, and the trees. Everything puts off a resonant frequency, and we are tied into that. And when we love our mother, I get this incredible vibrational healing all the time. And people look at me and say, what the heck is that? I said, well, it's basically, if you watch the movie Astral City, it shows this green energy, healing energy. Within the movie, this guy, dies, and he spends a fair bit of time downstairs and, I call it the dead planet, but basically it's just kind of like, umbral or purgatory. And then he goes, he finally regrets his sins, and he goes up to the one level above this one. I call it hospital heaven. And there they have green healing systems. So when you're connected with Mother, you're also connected to the higher realms, because basically Mother Earth is a creator being. She's powerful. I mean, they create planets, Lonnie. Okay? So when you connect to these things, you create all sorts of advantages for yourself in every way, shape, or form, whether it's intellectual, whether it's spiritual, whether it's health-wise. I don't get sick very often. I rarely feel depleted. I don't get depressed. So what's happened is that when you make this connection, a lot of things improve in your life. And you can look at the dark. See, one of the things I'm trying to do with activists in general is a lot of them get depressed. A lot of them become overwhelmed. A lot of them give up. It's because they spend too much time looking at the darkness. What you have to do is balance the looking at the darkness with the connection with the Mother Nature, with the higher forms of reality, like Yogi and I.
With why we're doing it, not just look at the problem, but remember the why. Remember the reason, what we want to get back. That's what activism is about. It's really just sticking up for our children, for our mother, for our father, for our beings. It's not like we want to change anything. It's about having the integrity to just say, no, you can't rape the planet. That's kind of the bottom line. Is we wonder why we live in a rapey culture. Well, that's kind of what we've done to the planet Earth.
Beautiful.
I mean, it's
beautiful. Yes, beautiful connection being made there. Yes. Yeah, the first actor, one of the greatest guests I've ever had, Kasha Joubert, runs the Global Eco Village Network. She made a video about our first act of discrimination or disassociation was when we left Mother Earth. This was the beginning of all the prejudice, of all the... we used to, look at the incredible diversity of Mother Earth and the plants and the animals and the insects, and look at every individual human being is unique, distinct, beautiful. But we have an issue with people looking different, having a different color all of a sudden. I mean, this is not a natural view of the world. We should be embracing difference. We should be saying, hey, the more different, the better. And this is where the political and economic problems are all solved when we get back to the garden. We realize that there are creative leaders within our midst who are here to recreate community, and that's what we need. We need thousands, hundreds of thousands of new eco-villages all over this planet. This is one of my goals, to help create these.
To go back from being big to small.
Absolutely.
Instead of having a big city of millions, you'd have a bunch of the same millions of people would still essentially live in nearby the same area, but the living space would be an entirely different format. What happens if you have that mindset and that culture to these big megalith cities and the structures of all that? It all eventually goes away and gets reclaimed by eco-villages?
Well, it's going to take quite a while to convert our cities. What we can do in the cities is
how are you going to convert a farm? You think a farmer's going to give up his land? Become more, like a farmer who's getting a subsidy, a corn farmer in Iowa who, their family gets millions of dollars in corn subsidies to grow this corn that's GMO, and yeah, it's GMO, but they live a good lifestyle. Their kids can go to college. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I've often said if there's going to be a war worth fighting, it's going to be with the farmers.
Yeah.
They're messing everything up with their modern agricultural systems, their pesticides, herbicides, the GMO, and they like the fact that they're making millions off it. And
yes, they think that it's a conflict between the two fundamental types of environmentalism, right? Between the anthropomorphic and what's it called? The anthropomorphic is the human, and the enviromorphic, the idea that the environment is more important. So that we're part of the environment, we don't have a right to disrupt it. Whereas the people who believe that these people believe the earth was made for them. And they have a right, and it is their God-given right, to manipulate the genes and do anything else and grow all the food in a test tube if they have to live on it and create the world that they want to have. Yeah. And we're just getting in their way. So herein lies, I guess, a fundamental value in, how do we go about that? And this is where the politics all comes in. You're right, it is politics.
Yeah. Lonnie, up here in Canada, there's not that many people. And there's a lot of water. And there's a lot of good land. Like, I'm living only an hour away from the capital city of Canada, Ottawa, and I'm telling you, it's pretty pristine out here. We did talk about the fact that there was a nuclear accident here, but not too far from here. But I don't know. I don't sense there's anything overly debilitating here.
That's a hilarious statement. No offense, Brian, but that's totally hilarious.
Well, I mean,
you're not looking. You might, if you're out in the woods and you end up seeing mutated plants and flowers and two-headed animals or, deformed animals or things like that coming up on the farm or deformed, mutated-looking plants, there are areas where it gets pretty heavily contaminated. And those are the kinds you wouldn't see people sick, and although your neighbors might have a higher risk of cancer, and that's stuff nobody talks about.
Right. Yeah. Well, like I say, after Fukushima, it released enough plutonium to kill everybody 1,000 times over on planet Earth. So,
amen to that. I mean, pretty much we have to accept the fact that we live in the age of fission. We are contaminated. Get over it.
And then so you practice regenerative systems, and that's what living in the forest is.
That's
even
right.
in Chernobyl. I mean, the lower life forms like the mouse and the basic grass eater type animals, bug eaters, they're showing a higher rate of cancer. But it's almost against everything that we've been taught. But the wolves are recovering, have done very well, very high rates, as we know, very high levels of radiation, considered very unsafe. This is what I mean about Mother Nature being a very powerful healer. Just getting back out, in terms of the cities and whatnot, we're going to go through a huge transition, Lonnie. This is being predicted by almost every psychic I know. I mean, we've got, this could be within the next few years. I mean, there's going to be some devastating things happening. But the people who are going to survive are the ones who know how to live in harmony with Mother Nature. And we're going to resettle the planet. That's the plan. That's what's... I mean, we already have a dead planet realm, okay? Within the universe. We're talking metaphysics now. But we don't need this planet to become dead. No, we need it to be a place where you choose between good and evil, and we have those, the soap opera of life and all that kind of nonsense that goes on around us, right? But we need a place that you have a choice. When you go down further, there ain't much choice. So this planet is not going to be destroyed. No, not in a million. It's not in the planet. Okay.
I don't think anybody's talking about the planet being destroyed, but we're talking about life on our planet being destroyed, which, frankly, that's a trajectory that I don't think we can avoid one way or the other. It's pretty obvious we're going to have a massive... Look at the animal die-off. That is only the bottom of the food chain, and it is starting to be, it'll be reflected as we go up. And, in fact, it is. We just don't keep track of the human deaths. There's not, like, big numbers and, But I also think this in terms of living through it. This is why I say happiness is resistance, because when you follow your bliss, when you help yourself live a healthier lifestyle, make that commitment to living on a higher vibration, you can actually stave off a lot of the negative effects of this contamination. That doesn't mean you will not succumb to it eventually, but you can live. There's a lot of beautiful living still left to have.
Well, that's precisely one of my main themes. Yeah, we've got to get back. First of all, if we never left Mother Nature, we wouldn't be in this mess. I mean, the First World War, and this is the Hopi say this all the time. The First World War is when the European warlords came here and basically destroyed a much more advanced system. Because they knew how to live in harmony. It was all sustainable. They weren't destroying anything. And there was 200 million people living on Turtle Island, which is now, we call the United States and Canada and Mexico. So, we used to know how to live. And there's only one way to live, Lonnie, and that's the way that we're intended to live. That's the way Mother and Father wanted us to live, right? That doesn't change. The fact that we've messed it all up doesn't change the truth of how we should be living here. Can you hear the guineas? You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Those are guinea pigs?
No, actually, those are guinea fowl.
Guinea fowl?
Yeah, chickens.
Oh, how cute!
They run around and they make a lot of noise.
Are they wild in your area?
No, we raise them here.
And you raise them. Do you eat meat or do you eat their eggs?
Sometimes we eat the eggs, although what we like to do is incubate them and then sell the chicks. Because what they are is a natural response to the Lyme disease and the ticks that have become weaponized by the military-industrial complex. Right? Mm-hmm. Ticks are not naturally this way, but they've been weaponized. And they're trying to keep people out of the woods. And it's,
Oh, that's what the Lyme disease is all about, to keep people from going, oh, that's very interesting. I hadn't thought of that, but so it's kind of like a germ warfare with the ticks.
Exactly. Yeah. And it can be nasty, Lyme disease. Actually, the two people living here now, Mike and Claire, we've lost some people because of it. So you have to be aware. I don't mean lost as in, die, but they just left.
Yeah.
I think because of concern over it. And then this is, but there are all sorts of ways of dealing with it naturally.
Yes.
Is the key for me. The deer have them, right? So we have a guy running around here with a bow and arrow trying to deal with that situation.
So with the deer, if somebody kills a deer and eats a deer with Lyme disease, do you get Lyme disease or no? Cooking it kills the Lyme disease?
No, the Lyme disease isn't the deer. It's the ticks that feed on the deer, that jump off.
Okay.
And they jump you.
Oh, okay. Got you.
That's the issue. Yeah. The deer are actually, not the problem. It's just the fact that they carry these ticks. So they're an indirect carrier.
Well, you brought up an interesting issue is about how really they are assaulting us on a subtle level, the system, the oppressors, or whatever we want to call them, the people that want us not to get off their gravy train. That's essentially why they want us. They want us. I mean, Mike Pence, in my view, walking out of the football stadium this weekend really was a symbol of them declaring war on the people of color and women in this country, the same day that they turned back the birth control, access to birth control, and the EPA rules. It's basically saying, we're in charge, you guys sit down, shut up. 2 million Americans are still without electricity. Puerto Rico asked for 150 generators, and they gave them 3 at FEMA. They're just now getting their generators, just now. So these, and not that many, like a few hundred, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, these are not subtle things, but the way for us to stand up to them, I don't believe it's with openly defying them, because they can always, like the Lyme disease, they can come up with something else. What we have to do is stick to our values and live our truth and be healthy and well.
Yeah, I mean, don't let them get, take control of your psyche. That's the key. What was I going to say about the Lyme disease? Like I say, they're working on a cure, just like with AIDS, right? It took them like 10 years to find a decent cure for it, so maybe 15. So I think that they're eventually going to come up with some sort of response to it through the medical system. But basically, they want everybody on this planet in a hospital. They want us dependent on their systems, on the military medical complex, psychiatric drugs, you name it. So, like I say, so what we're going to do out here is we're creating a beautiful summer kitchen. We're going to run seminars on how to live sustainably, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. Okay, that's the long-term, sort of medium-term goal. But eventually, I've got my 5 major fixes. First is to know that if you don't know how to love yourself and others, you're going nowhere. So that's step number 1. Live. Listen to what Christ said. The Christ consciousness. That's a good source. There's many other sources, though, spiritually. The next one is discernment. Figure out what's real and what's not real. Okay, figure out what science is bogus and what is bogus. That's the second. Because then we can deal with issues like... Yeah,
but Brian, both those things, those are 2 big steps. Like, you say this as if these are easy things. To tell somebody to really love themselves and really love and appreciate themselves, for people who have been battered since the day they were born, to reprogram yourself is just not that easy of like, oh, wake up, snap out of it. You know what I mean? And then figure out what's discernment. Like, that's part of the lack of self-love. You doubt your gut, right? Because we're born trusting and loving ourselves. If you're convinced from like the first month you're born, like you're nothing but worthless, that's a very difficult. It's not difficult. I think my point is more about it's a process. It's not you're going to wake up one day and boom, you love yourself, or boom, you have discernment. Well, it's a process.
We have people coming out here all the time. Okay. So it's a matter of getting things organized, and it takes time to do things. When you're doing everything on your own and with very little money, it takes time to get things done. But we will get it done. We have a full workshop here. We can pretty much make everything from the land. So no, but we're not going to save everyone. What we're doing, what the Back to the Foundation movement is basically, we're going to create a core of people who know how to live. Like the permaculture movement is a good example of that kind of movement. Okay, not everyone's going to become a permaculturist, but at some point, we're going to need to get back to the land to survive. And these are the people that people are going to go up to say, hey, you know, how do I maximize the yield out of my land or out of my backyard or out of my window? Because I can't afford to buy the food anymore, right? Look at Venezuela.
Yeah, and it's going to be about people learning how to do simple, basic things functioning, like living without the mega system. You know, like just learning how to can, how to pickle, how to pick fruit, how to harvest. I mean, there's a lot. I'll tell you what, living in Oregon for me was a life transition because I came from LA, right? So I had never seen a piece of fruit grow on a tree, really. Yeah, other than an orange.
Yeah, so. No. And the amazing thing is that the first supermarket wasn't actually come into existence until 1947. So it's that new a trend, and now it's basically ubiquitous. I mean, and basically, kids don't even know where food comes from anymore half the time, or milk or anything. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy how quick we've gotten away from our natural roots. But I'm completely convinced that there is enough people here. Okay, it doesn't take that many, and with the internet and with the power of all that stuff, we can educate millions at a time if we can create the impetus to make it happen. One of the things I've learned spiritually is that you don't give up. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. So we have to be resilient. Okay, there's no giving up. This is the time, Lonnie, for the.
What do they say? Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup.
Oh, I like that one. All right.
You know, that's part of a poem.
Yeah, and this is one thing I do. I'm good at inspiring people, okay? Because people, and I see it in the activist community, a lot of people want to commit suicide, and I pull so many people away from that gulf, that huge mistake, you know, and I say, well, what's going to happen next? You know? Yeah, you came here to be an earth angel, and you're going to give up? I mean, come on. You're obviously doing something wrong. Let's look at what you're doing, you know? So,
besides that, even if you get, you know, it does nothing but cause pain to everyone. It's not just yourself. It's a really...
Yeah, it's a bad move on every level. Yeah. Believe me, and you get in trouble spiritually too. So, no, folks. If you want to do that, it shows that you're not nurturing yourself enough. You're not connected to the right people. But the thing is about being on alternative radio and being the alternative media. There's a lot of good people, out there.
True. That's true. On this station, that's what I said yesterday on the radio station was like, regardless of who the points of view on this on UCY TV, every person that I've heard on this station, all the channels, even the most diverse opinions that I don't agree with, they love our planet and they're lovers. There are really a lot of good people making an effort, and that's why they're doing it. They're taking times out of their lives to do this.
And every day someone else gets on board. I mean, it's just the number of people now on the web, on YouTube, it's just astounding. And again, as you say, the journey forward towards discernment is not an easy one. Luckily, I mean, I studied philosophy as a youngster, and I really nailed discernment through the Vedic system. I think Vedic knowledge systems are tremendous. One of the reasons I promote Yoga Ramesh Pandey so much is because he's kind of got like Vedic for dummies kind of system worked out. You don't have to be really that bright or that well educated to respond well to yogi's techniques. He's brilliant and he's prophetic, and ever need to be pumped up and re-energized, the yogi's your man. I mean, that guy, even me, I mean, I have my days where I get a little bit despondent, and that guy, I mean, I just watched one of our interviews and right away I felt, I see what I'm doing wrong. I'm expecting things to change too quickly, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, or I'm being fatalistic, whatever I'm doing with my mind. He fixes all that stuff. This guy is in a constant state, a high of love and bliss. It's just
the thing that I've gotten from him is that it's a constant path of self-kindness, like to really be conscious of how, not to be so you know what I mean, like so final about the judgment of ourselves.
Well, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. And that God exists, and it's a loving powerful, loving force, and that we are basically living in the Kali Yuga, which is all predicted by the Vedas. There's different eras you're in, and we're going through a tough era right now. So don't let the fact that this was all predicted and it's almost predetermined that we were going to be living in this era. So let's rise above it. Let's use it as an opportunity to get stronger spiritually and come together. Come together as a species. Come together as friends, as family. This is what we're supposed to be doing now in these times, in these tough times.
So the coming together is really our work. That's what our work really is.
Well, that's another thing I'm trying to do with Making a Difference, is to bring the positive, more and less people together under one platform. Whether or not I'll achieve that goal, well, that's to be seen. But I see it. But the good thing is I see it happening in other people. I see other people making connections, and that's good. Whether I do it or someone else does it, I have no ego in this. I just want to see it happen.
Yeah. Well, I think that we don't really have a path out. I mean, this is the choice. We either work towards the good of it all, or we work, non-action is actually working for the negative. So you have to do something.
When you give up, you live in a constant state of sadness and depression, and usually you become addicted to something and you become self-abusive. And I see this too in the activist community, but it's everywhere. But it really, what saddens me most is when someone is trying to be a leader and they're involved in self-abuse. I mean, this is not good. So another reason I'm here is to help the ones that are just falling a bit off the mantle, the ones who are supposed to be leading, becoming self-destructive. And that's not good. So,
well, there's a couple things that I'd like to. I mean, like when you've said this a few times, like supposed to, like this. I kind of take issue with that thought that anything is supposed to be anyway. I don't know how things are supposed to be. I don't know. Like to me, that's like shoulds. You know what I mean? Like things don't have to be a certain way. We have options. So we have paths that we choose, and when we don't choose a certain path, that just means we're choosing a different spiritual outcome. The physical outcome will be different. Our spiritual path will be different. I mean, to me, that all roads lead to Rome. We're on this road of understanding our connection with the God universe. In my opinion, the earth is a ball of love, and that's why the major factor on our planet, that's why we have this dichotomy of evil, good over, because it's this hurtful, evil thing, or we have this all-encompassing, strong, loving, powerful. To me, love is greater than fear. So when you refuse to live in fear, which is the oppression, then you're able to really live your full life, your spiritual experience. But to say that somebody should be doing something, or I don't know, I think there's phases of all of that, where we should be or what we ought to be doing. I don't know if anybody should be or are supposed to do anything. I don't know if that whole concept of supposed to be doing anything is real.
Well, I think that the foundation of the soil, the human soil, it has to be reestablished. Whether you want to,
Yeah. I'll give you that one. We're way off track. But actually, I think that's part of our path, don't you think, Brian? Like that's part of the growth pattern. Like we couldn't, as you say, we are headed towards some pretty cataclysmic events. We already see that, and we know it's coming.
Yeah.
And we're involved in it. Like Fukushima, the radiation, like since the mid-50s, we've been super screwed, and nobody's really ever explained it like that. But that's really, we're seeing the chemical contamination, nuclear contamination, the animals, the oceans can't keep up with our pollution. As you say, the ocean liners are a major destructive force, which frankly not many people even think about. We think, we need our big ocean liners for the commerce around the world, and thank goodness we have them.
It's part of the control mechanism, too, because if we have to rely on, like Puerto Rico knows that very well right now, if we have to rely on others in order to sustain ourselves in our communities, we're in big trouble, because they're going to use that against us as a way of controlling us. So it's all part of this huge control network. So the more we create things locally, the more we meet our needs locally. It's almost a basic first step to becoming anything close to being a radical person or someone who wants to change, is going to make a positive contribution here. You have to get back to the garden of love and abundance. This is, you want to call it a should. You see, language gets in the way, I think, but I'm not chastising people who aren't. All I'm just saying is that if you call yourself someone who's supposedly a radical and wants to make a change here, you got to get back to the basics, and the basics are all we need. As I said the other day to Yogi, I says, the less I have, the more I feel connected, and it's so true. I mean, all I have out here is I don't even live in my yurt yet. I just sleep in a tent. I have a mesh over top of me. I eat very sparingly. I need very little nutrition to stay strong and healthy. I see my children as much as I can, and that's a great source of joy for me. I have a few friends. I do my show, but the less you have, Lonnie, the better. And we've been sold on this notion that we have to have all this junk that's killing everything, all this production, shipping, and it's just all part of the mass deception, right? So getting back to the land, getting back to love and abundance is the first step. And if you don't do that, if you're radical, you're going to become debilitated just by living in these cities or these polluted areas. And there's a lot more than radiation pollution, believe me.
I know.
They're bringing these powerful cell networks. I barely have a cell signal here. So that too is something that really concerns me when they bring self-driving car networks.
Right. The cell networks, the chemicals, the radiation, the chemtrails. Let's don't forget the chemtrails, because that stuff comes down. It settles down on us, folks. I mean, this, and as you said, like even the chemical warfare, like they're conducting, So I apologize for the phone. I forgot to put it in the other room. It's going to ring for 6 times.
The guineas are going to say hello.
Yeah.
I'm walking away from the guineas. They're so noisy, but they're such a cool kind of pack bird. They all sort of walk together. It's kind of cool. Big family. It's so beautiful. The family, we've gotten away from the family. The transsexual movement is just all an assault against the family.
You know what? I have a friend who's transsexual, and I understand that concept of feeling like you're in the closet. I think, speaking about going back to living naturally, among the Native Americans, at least in America and in the Northwest, people could dress the way they wanted. Men that felt like they needed to dress like the women and tend with the women were perfectly allowed to live the way they wanted to live. There's always a certain poor population of the culture that doesn't identify with gender, or they're not straight. I mean, that's just a natural anomaly in life. And I know in the Northwest communities and in the let's put it this way, I studied the Native American culture on the West Coast, the Northwest Native Americans. All of the Native tribes that I studied in my classes, that was a common thing, was that they just accepted people for who they were. There was no big trauma over not being the right gender. If a man wanted to dress like a woman and live with the women and have a husband, he was allowed to. Many of them had wives. They had wives and they lived with it. They did the women's work with their wives, and vice versa. If a woman felt like she was, male gender, she could hang out and deal with the men, and they weren't judgmental about gender and sexuality. So I don't think it's a destruction of our culture to allow people to be free.
I think what's happened is that they put so many stresses on the male-female relationship. What's happening is people are saying, I don't want to be one or the other. I want to be something different. And that's what we've got. Now, we've got 30 different types of sexuality, Lonnie, right now. We've got people.
So I think, who cares? Like, really, if it bugs you, don't talk about it. Like, to me, I don't think I have an issue. This is where I have an issue with the transgender thing, is doing gender transformation on people that are children and underage. You must be an adult to figure out what gender assignment you want to have if you're going to do any of that stuff. That's my only big thing. All that other stuff, I personally think that that's, again, a way of getting us off track and against each other. I think they're using human nature and what happens naturally. It's not a huge portion of the population. It's not big. It's a tiny portion of the population.
It's going to get bigger. We protected them here in Canada under the Constitution.
Well, good. I'm glad they're protected.
Let me explain how it's going to happen. Basically, right now we have laws to protect them against discrimination. And what happens is that now people are going to say, hey, I know when I tried to get into the fire department about 6 years ago, they said, say you're gay because we're low representation on the gay.
Oh, come on. That's such a, like, for real.
This is how it works. Okay, I'm not against, look, I love everybody. I'm not against people that are transsexual, but I don't want it to become the norm. Okay, because what it is the gay.
It's not the norm. This is the point. You know what we want to have be the norm? That it doesn't matter. That people can be what they wanted and they are not going to be discriminated or taken out back and murdered. That's the norm. That has been the norm. People in the Western culture have been in the closet. And this is where I object to this whole, the government isn't using people's sexuality on them. People are demanding their rights. I mean, I get it that we have been manipulated, that there is, and frankly, it really boils down to white supremacy if you want to really get down to it. The fundamental core is white supremacy of we're better than everybody else. And you have to do exactly what we say. And we say that, there's only one sex, one God, one religion, one way of thinking. And if you're not like that, something's wrong with you.
Well, I mean, this is, again, the genius of the eco community and the smallest beautiful community is that, you can have any kind of community. Like, I don't dislike people who are transsexual. I'm not against them. I just think that what it is the transition to the Borg, okay? Because basically we're going to become so unhealthy, we're going to be so attacked by every poison, every toxin that we're throwing out there. People are going to start being encouraged to wear different, to change things physically on their body.
Yes, and there are people who want that. I have a person who refused to be friends with me because she said, you know what, I'm going to take my 13 drugs a day. I want to be attached to them because they make me feel safe. And you make me feel nervous. I can't be around you because you make me feel anxious.
Yeah, I'm not against people who are attracted to male and female. That's not the issue. The issue is when they start operating on themselves and changing themselves. And we have to pay. We're paying for it up here in Canada through our healthcare systems. This is not something people pay for up here. To me, that's the line. I mean, that's where, and then they're encouraging kids to get into it. I think that the whole thing about the medical part of it is, again, my feelings, we've had this discussion, my feelings about Western medicine is completely evil. So I can't get into that part of it. But I would say that, I have a big issue with the gender conversation about saying we can reassign the gender of a 15-year-old. I think that person ought to have a responsibility to wait till they're 25 to figure out who they really are. Because when you're 15, you don't know who you are. And frankly, when you're 25, you may not know. And so there's a lot, there's a lot of things we could be doing. You can't just throw a blanket statement out there. If I lived in Canada, if the laws were good about gender reassignment surgery, I wouldn't, like now in the United States, our military has been paying for that. I don't really mind that because honestly, they're members of our society. We want them to live the life they have. It's a small pittance compared to what we put into our military. That's how I feel. But I think we're not in that place yet because the system is too cockeyed. The medical system is way too screwy. They just use people like, tools. It's right. Well, this is the progression I see. Okay, so we accept people changing their sexual orientation. Then we start playing around with designer babies, which are already out there. We teach people, you can pick the traits you want for your children. And then we say, we're all getting sick. Hey, there's this cool machine you can wear that's going to filter your blood and it's going to keep you from getting sick. Then it's just going to be we got NASA astronauts. They're talking about redesigning their DNA so they can survive space travel better. This is the kind of stuff we've got. The chimeras being approved by the Vatican.
Right, the CRISPR program. But look, let's just be clear. All of that, none of it's meant for us. We're the poor people. They're saving it for them. I think it's going to be more like the Astro Boy theory, where the really super rich, the elite, have all the toys, all the assets, and then they cut everybody off. And those in the toxic planet are going to have to learn how to live on their own. That's how I see it going, like in the future. Like they're not going to be sharing this technology. They're not going to want to mold people they'll just do away with people and just build people in a test tube. When you talk about the Borg, that's really where they're going to go.
Well, I think they're going to try to make money off us while we're suffering. I really do think that they're going to be selling all this stuff to people. People are being wearing space planet Earth.
Agree.
Yeah.
So I want to read this poem from Lao Tzu called his book called The Way of Life. It's number 40. It's 4 lines. So we have a few minutes, but I thought this is kind of it speaks to our conversation here. Life on its way returns into a mist. Its quickness is its quietness again. Existence of this world of things and men renews their never needing to exist. Existence of this world of things and men renews their never needing to exist. Wow. Because isn't that pretty? Like this was written 600 years BC, or that's what they say.
Interesting. Well, what is that? I mean, I don't get much out of that, but what do you get from that? It doesn't do much.
Well, I mean, life on its way returns into a mist. That's what we're talking about. Life returning back into the mist, because we're little tiny creatures on this planet. We are really, if we look at it, I mean, Guy McPherson talks about this. We maybe have 100 years, unless we make a tremendous shift. The majority of species on this planet is terminated. We are in the 6th level extinction level event, and we are falling off the cliff faster than ever, than any other prior extinction. And that is Guy McPherson talks about, like, we are on the trajectory. So what really matters is what we're talking about, love coming into the light. Love is the only thing that really, really does matter. And how we live our lives on our daily basis really does matter. And who we are really does matter.
Yeah.
That's all that we have.
Yeah. Does Guy talk about the fact that this planet is basically being visited on a constant basis by other species, advanced, good aliens, that we create an alliance with the bad ones, and that we can't give up hope because you never know? The Rainbow Warrior prophecy is out there. And the Rainbow Warriors, to me, are the advanced good aliens that are going to come here. They're species of humans that have evolved and through the technology crisis.
Well, I sure wish they'd get here. Like, we're waiting if that's going to be. I mean, I used to kind of adhere to that, but I've sort of given up on that idea, because honestly, if they're going to come, they ought to come soon, because we have Fukushima, Chernobyl. I think that's kind of we would love. It's like people say, well, the Queen of England is a reptile. Like, she'd love to be a reptile. Then she'd have an excuse as to why she's so completely inhumane. So, yeah. I mean, I know you can't talk about the Queen, but I can.
I talk about the Queen all the time.
Yeah. Isn't that illegal when you're Canadian? You can't exactly say anything against the Crown.
Well, I don't think that's really the issue. No, you can certainly criticize the Queen up here, yeah, for sure. Oh, the one thing you can't criticize are Jewish people. They are the most protected here. Say anything anti-Jewish.
That has to go to the Judeo-Christian foundation of our Western civilization, though, more than anything else. So that's, again, a political issue rather than, that's the big thing. Look, we have 30 seconds left, Brian. This has gone very quickly. I hope that you can come back like in a few weeks or a month or so.
Yeah, it's been a bit all over the place, but yeah, it's...
it usually does when we're talking about spiritual items, and especially since, like, I stop people in their tracks when I disagree with them. Anyways, put your courage feet on, you guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and thanks for joining us. Thank you, KEPW, for carrying our show.
My name is S.M. Gibson, and I am the host of Anti-Media Radio.